Welcome back. Last time we concluded our discussion of Sawm and Zakat, and now we're ready to turn to the final pillar of the Hajj. Dr. Nasr describes this beautifully in our reading, so I'll just summarize and add a few points. First of all, this aspect of Islam is very hard for most young American students to understand the significance of, because modern Christianity doesn't emphasize pilgrimage very much. In the Middle Ages it did, and you still have it in Europe and South America, but there's a world of difference between pilgrimage to the Church of the Virgin of Guadalupe in Mexico City, where there are big boulevards in which you have pious Catholics crawling on the ground for 3 or 4 miles, and what you have in San Antonio, Texas, which is only 500 miles away. It's really a totally different world. But if there's one rite of pilgrimage that is the most spectacular, you might say, it's the Islamic rite of the Hajj to Mecca, although there's a hierarchy of pilgrimage to other sacred sites, such as Medina, where the Prophet of Islam is buried. As Dr. Nasr explained, the Hajj is not Muhammadan in the sense of being promulgated by the Prophet. It's really Abrahamic. That is, Islam revived the rite of the pilgrimage of Abraham to Mecca, which the Quran and Bible refer to as Becca. The B or Ba can be substituted with the M or Mim in Arabic, which is why you can refer to the city as Becca or Mecca. In any case, the house of God in Becca or Mecca is considered by Muslims to have been built originally by the primordial man Adam. But it was reconstructed by Abraham when he came to Arabia after he left his wife and son there by divine command. Abraham rebuilt the house of God, the primordial temple, the Kaaba, with his son when he came of age. You probably all know the story of Abraham and his wife Sarah, who could not bear children, and Hagar. Sarah herself, according to the Bible, proposed that Abraham marry the Egyptian woman Hagar, to whom God said he would give Abraham a child, which he did with Ishmael. Now, where the Islamic story and the biblical story separate is that in the Bible, Ishmael sort of disappears out of the scene very quickly, whereas in Islam, he's very important because he's the father of the Arabs, as his brother Isaac is the father of the Jews. And that's why the Jews and the Arabs are cousins, racially, linguistically, in every way. Unfortunately, many people today lose sight of this because of the tragedies that now exist. In any case, Mecca was sort of the invisible temple that did not manifest itself in the world until the rise of Islam. So the Prophet reconstituted the rite of Abraham related to what Abraham, Hagar, and Ishmael did. All of this has to do with the sacred history not of 7th century Islam, but the Islam of Abraham, 4,000 years or so before. The rite of Hajj takes place at a particular time on the Islamic calendar, the month of Dhul Hijjah, which rotates throughout the year like Ramadan, because of the lunar calendar and for reasons of divine justice that we've already discussed. Now, the Hajj is incumbent upon all adult Muslims, male and female, provided they're well off enough to be able to provide for their family for the length of the journey, which could be over a year in earlier centuries. And if one wants to perform the Hajj a second time, there should be no extreme poverty in one's immediate neighborhood. Otherwise, one should give the money to one's neighbors who are in dire need rather than performing the Hajj a second time. Now, the Hajj itself is a remarkable institution for the unity of the Islamic world and for the meeting of people from various parts of the Islamic world. The Hajj last year had around 3 million people. There's no single religious rite anywhere in the world that brings so many people from all over the world together. Its rituals are very complex, lasting several days. I won't be going into them here, but I want to point out that each one is profoundly symbolic. For example, Dr. Nasr notes that the simple dress of men, in which you can't tell the difference between a king and a beggar, symbolizes detachment from all the things we usually identify ourselves with. The counterclockwise circumambulation around the Kaaba comes with the awareness that one is moving against the march of time, and washing away from one's soul all the dross that has accrued within as a result of the flow of time. The standing on the plain of Arafah with millions of pilgrims symbolizes our standing before God on the Day of Judgment. And the sacrifice of an animal at the end of the Hajj symbolizes the sacrifice of one's passionate soul before God, whereby the pilgrim returns to the state of primordiality, or the Edenic state in which he or she was created. And God forgives that person's sins if the Hajj is performed with full sincerity and devotion. I also want to highlight what Dr. Nasr mentions on page 138 of The Heart of Islam regarding the exchange of ideas and goods that takes place between Muslims from various parts of the world after the Hajj, which some Muslim scholars have called the world's first international scientific congress as well as international economic fair. Indeed, Muslim scholars in the past would send questions with pilgrims from their hometown to ask other pilgrims from other parts of the Islamic world. For example, what's the geography of Madagascar, its mountains, rivers, and so forth, for pilgrims who were from Madagascar? That's why the Muslims had the most accurate maps in the world for centuries. Of course, most importantly, purified pilgrims returning home bring something of the grace or barakah of the center to the farthest outreaches of the Islamic world. Finally, there's the lesser pilgrimage, or Umrah, to Mecca, which is a vastly simplified version of the Hajj that can be performed at any time of the year. The Umrah purifies oneself of sins that one may have committed since the previous Hajj. Similarly, there's pilgrimage to the tomb of the Prophet of Islam in Medina, as well as other pilgrimages, forming a hierarchy that Dr. Nasr discusses in our readings. That concludes our discussion of the Hajj, and we now turn to the question of whether jihad is a sixth pillar of Islam or within all the pillars of Islam.